We're just going to keep letting everyone in. We're just going to hang out for a minute, let everyone get connected to the audio, let everyone in from the waiting room. And in the meantime, I just want to welcome you all. Thank you so much for joining us for this yoga and recovery chat. We'll keep letting people in. We'll do the official start in just a minute. But so everyone knows, this is being recorded, but Chelsea and I were spotlighted, I don't know, but ours will be the only video being recorded. If you unmute yourself and speak at any point, we will hear your voice, but you can type in the chat if you prefer to as well. Just heads up there. We'll be doing 30 minutes of conversation, followed by 30 minutes of yoga. And okay, I think I'm going to be done waffling now. It looks like everyone is in from the waiting room, connected to the audio. So we will get going. So hi, everyone. I am Kristen Portland. I'm the executive director of ANID. In case you didn't know, we are an eating disorder nonprofit that does peer support in lots of different ways. Check us out. We're cool. And here today as well, I love doing this with you, Chelsea, is Chelsea from Eat, Breathe, Thrive. And I'll let you talk about yourself and your organization for a minute.
Thanks, Kristen. And it's so nice to see everyone, whether you're on video or just kind of streaming in the chats. Really nice to be here and back with Kristen. I think it's not been quite a year since she and I have done one of these together, but it's been a little while. If we've not
been here since the first one.
It has been a year because it was Eating Disorder Awareness Week last year that we started this series. So happy Eating Disorder Awareness Week, happy kickoff day. I'm Chelsea, if we've not met before, and I'm the founder and director of Eat, Breathe, Thrive. And our mission is to prevent and help people recover from eating disorders, integrate, overcome, make meaning of whatever language you choose to represent your experience. I'm really honored and happy to be here with Kristen and to be doing this event with you all. Kristen, do you want to get us started with our question? Our theme this week or this session is changes, which we discussed at the beginning is a really giant topic to tackle in an hour.
It is a huge topic. We will definitely not touch on every aspect of change, but as we get started, we do want to invite people to participate a little bit. There's a lot of us here, so we're not going to do a formal go around and everyone share a check-in, but we want to invite you to put in the chat your name, location if you're comfortable, pronouns, and your answer to the question, what is a recent positive change you've seen in yourself and your community? And also throughout, this is participatory as well. So if you ever want to jump in, feel free to use the raise hand feature on Zoom. If you look at the bottom in the reactions, you can see there's an option to raise your hand. That'll be a prompt to us to give you some space to speak. And while everyone is thinking about their check-in, again, feel free to drop that in the chat whenever. Chelsea, our opening question, we kind of went back and forth about, again, the giant topic of change, but we landed on what are the changes you want to see in the world around you to support your recovery in general, and prevent eating disorders in the first place, which is still, now I'm thinking about it even more, a really, really big question to open it up with.
Yeah, when we were first thinking about this topic, Kristen actually started this and said, we can really think of change in two buckets, and maybe they're not entirely two buckets. They've got a lot of crossover as well. But one is maybe over historically, what are the changes you've seen in yourself, and and then in the future, what are the changes you want to see in your recovery? But also, we're not just independent individuals in our recovery, right? We're connected up with families and with friend groups and with communities and societies and cultures, and we're not recovering by ourselves. So in some ways, I think I thought was, I said to Chris, I'm like, it's the bigger topic, and maybe it's a hard one to get at, but also what are the changes we want to see in the families and the communities and the societies we live in to support our recovery and support the recovery of those we care about. And then also, I think, to tie them together, what does it look like to embody that ourselves? So it's like, oh, this is what I want my society to do. This is what's wrong with the world around me that makes it hard to recover. But how do you, that old saying, be the change you want to see in the world? What does it look like to embody that yourself?
All of these, every individual piece of that could be a full series, much less a half an hour of conversation. But it's something that I think about a lot now as well, both, for myself and what I want out of the world and my communities and the people around me, but also it's very much on my mind because I have a daughter now, right? And I want to think about her life and raise her in a way where she doesn't feel a lot of those things that I did. She doesn't have the same experiences, and she can just kind of go forth and be the confident, tiny, amazing person she is now forever and ever. And, there's so many pieces of this because there's what you create at home, but then, you're out in the world. Your home isn't the only little bubble. So you can think about changes you bring to yourself. And I don't know, maybe home is a good place to start here because that's kind of a nice capsule of the space between individual and community.
Yeah.
So I think, no, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say there's some things in the chat actually that link up right with what you're saying, Kristen. There's one person has shared. I'll just say person because I don't know if you necessarily want to be named, so that's the only reason I'm not giving your name, FYI. But one person shares, after years of eating disorder and living in shame, I finally found that I'm not alone. The fact that I found a community is huge. So I do think of that as like, it's the changes we want to see in our home, but just having community, having home, having family is big. A couple others that are here. This one really moved me. This person shared, and I know this person, so it's really nice to see you here. I've started to listen to my body more. March is the 4th anniversary for when I came out as trans. Actually in an Eat, Breathe, Thrive course. Thank you for letting me be me. So maybe there's a thread there around, community, celebrating and honoring people as they are, and allowing space for that. I won't get all of these, but I'm just jumping on with you. Recent positive change here is doing little things here and there to reconnect and express my authentic self. Similar theme. Another one, I'm not on social media as often. I set boundaries with my family. I also found, this is kind of related to what you said, Kristen, I've also found out that I'm pregnant, and it's a huge motivation for self-love and communication. There's another one.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congrats.
Yeah, and as well as we talk about families, I'm thinking both of, your biological family, children, and the chosen family, right? The people that you feel comfortable saying, this is what I need. This is how we can frame things too. And, for mine, I do a lot of work of just being present. Like for me, there was a lot of stress and anxiety and forward thinking that were kind of tied up. And being present and mindful is something that has been really, really powerful for me. And that's been a change that I try to embody for my family as well. Just thinking about, hey, we're here now. This is what we're doing. This is what we're focusing on. We don't need to worry about later. We can really enjoy this meal, this moment, whatever it is. And that's something that I'm very much trying to bring to both my chosen and biological family at the moment and forever.
Oh, that's beautiful. That links so much up to yoga.
Yeah.
That ability to be in the present moment and just be with what is instead of changing it or fixing it or jumping out of it. Yeah, I coming into this, I probably should have thought a bit more about what are the changes that I want that I have seen. I was thinking so kind of the global, what do we need to see in the world? What the person shared about social media, I think really is something I'm kind of calling for in the world and something I'm seeing in myself. This is a bit personal, but I think for a long time, even as someone in recovery and even as somebody that was like, running an organization in this space, I never knew what to do with kind of my public presence and my public persona. And I felt like, posting on social, am I allowed to post on when I go on holiday? And, if I'm in a relationship, or does it all need to be eating disorder centric and all of that? And I think maybe kind of pulling back into myself and away from technology has been a really, really positive change I've seen in my life, of just going, you know what, there's nothing to perform, there's nothing to, like, no appearance to give to the world, um and really kind of just cultivating being who I am in relationship with the people close to me. I don't know if that makes sense. It's kind of a
It does. And I relate as well, like the idea of how much of yourself you put out there authentically and how much needs to be performative because you're the face of something more. And, I think a lot of people can relate to that on a lot of different levels. If they're recovered, like, is it okay to post this? Are people going to judge what I'm eating or how I'm moving? Or if they're still, working towards recovery, are people going to judge my appearance or get concerned? And all of those questions can really get in the way of showing up authentically. And as well, someone put in the chat that they're working on speaking up when they hear people making comments and judgments about their own bodies and others. And I think that relates as well, because it's a fear, right? That people are going to say things about us, or that we're going to hear them say things about other people and not know how to react. And that whole diet culture thing of judging your body, judging other people's bodies, what they're eating or not eating, it's a big barrier. People, I think back to kind of what you brought up about how to perform yourself. It's on people's minds. And I don't know where I'm going from there, but that's what popped up for me while I was listening to you.
No. I think it shows up a lot in recovery, especially as you're navigating that space between who I've always been has been someone with an eating disorder, and now who I'm being now might be somebody in recovery. And maybe you enter kind of a phase where you've been in recovery for a long time, and it feels like there's kind of a new persona or identity, and how you show up in the world around that, I think, can be it can be confronting. It's like people make comments about your body, and then it's like, are you public about it? If you've been in shame around having an eating disorder a long time, is it now the huge badge that you wear? And then maybe you go through a phase for a while of really wearing that badge. Then it's like, wait a minute, this isn't really, I'm more than just somebody that's in recovery from an eating disorder. So it does really tie up with identity. There's a lot of stuff in the chat. I also just don't want to forget that if you do want to take yourself off mute and contribute to the conversation in any way, the chat is great, and we're both trying to keep an eye. I can see us both kind of like, oh yeah, let's go. So it's helping us with the conversation. But if you want to chime in, or you have a question, or anything you want to add to the conversation, you're more than welcome to raise a hand as well.
Mm-hmm. And someone mentioned people not saying, oh, but you look fine now, so you must be fine. And I think for in eating disorders specifically, people, they really do focus on the appearance. And there's not always that understanding that even someone who visually reads as like the picture of health could be really, really deeply struggling. And, more and more, I think we're understanding that is common.
Yeah. One thread that we're spending a lot of time with Eat, Breathe, Thrive right now is around weight stigma. And I guess the good news for everyone in our community is that there's a lot of research coming out on this, and there's a lot of people within the treatment industry even coming out and saying we've got to address this. This idea that we should diagnose eating disorders using a person's body weight or a person's BMI, or that part of the treatment of an eating disorder should be telling somebody what their weight should be, and that's a measure of health at all. So I will say one of the changes I would like to see in our culture and our world is this disentanglement of eating disorders and weight, and eating disorders and body size, because as we know, most people, like the vast majority, 94%, I think is the research, of people with eating disorders are not what would be classified by BMI, and I put parentheses as underweight. And people can have health at all kinds of body weights and body sizes. So the idea that we've got to restore the weight to, some sort of imaginary perfect ideal is probably not the best way to treat a condition that goes far beyond a person's weight, as we all know.
Yeah. And this research is only
over.
looking at folks who are, diagnosed as well. And it's a spectrum, right? You're not either 100% diagnosable or everything is fine. There are so many people in that middle ground that could really use help and education and resources and feel like they don't count because they don't meet the metrics or the really rigid criteria. And, I want to speak to all of them too and make sure that people, I guess I'm saying that's a change I want to see, is that people know that they're allowed to reach out and ask for help, even if things are only a little bit not okay. You don't need to wait for the rock bottom. You don't need to wait until you need to go see a lot of different medical professionals. Just being uncomfortable or unhappy is something that is worth getting help for.
Yeah.
So along those lines, I have a question. Can I just jump in?
Sure.
So I have a young lady that I work with. I'm a therapist and trying to get...
Oh, we've lost your audio.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, she eats, like, she tells me that she barely eats, and she'll eat like 2 bites of something. And she looks underweight, and I was worried about that, but I asked the doctor, because I work in a pediatric clinic, and the doctor was monitoring her very closely for all the psychological problems. But anyway, she basically said, the doctor says she's not underweight. So then, this girl has lots of problems, multiple problems. So it's just a challenge to know, when do I alert the doctor if we're not going by the weight or the way she looks or what she's saying? How would I know when to say, hey, maybe this is more serious? Because definitely there's restrictive eating. I've been working with using some of the training information that you guys have been giving, because I've been going to lots of trainings the last couple of months. So I did talk to the mom about, if there's a food police in the house, if there's people, reacting, and I know there are, and, that needs to be addressed, what can be done about that. So I'm trying to help the family to know how to help her, but I'm also trying to figure out, at what point do I say, ding, 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 this is a more serious situation.
Thank you for your question. It's a really good question. I think one thing I'll just say is that there's probably lots of folks with eating disorders here in the room, and I would ask you to reflect, if you're in the room and have had an eating disorder, what are those things that maybe, because you might be able to help answer this question, what are those things besides weight that were signs that things weren't okay in your eating disorder? What were the things that, like, oh man, at the height of my eating disorder, this is what it looked like. This was suffering. So you please feel free to drop that into the chat, because that might actually be a really helpful answer to this question. But one thing I would answer in your question is, I'll just acknowledge that we're at a really tricky time in the eating disorder treatment and care world, because the systems we've had for diagnosis and treatment for a long time have focused really heavily on weight as a criteria for severity and weight as a criteria for diagnosis. So working within those systems, there's a lot of people that maybe aren't schooled in eating disorders very well, that they have the best of intentions, but all they know is what they've learned in their medical training and psychological training, which perhaps said, a person has a severe eating disorder when they're below an 18.5 BMI. So what I would look for is maybe some resources, and I would think the keywords would be weight stigma in eating disorder diagnosis, health at every size approach to eating disorder treatment. You could even there's some great research on how many people with severe eating disorders are underweight. And there's a lot out there. So I might look for those resources. and then see if maybe in communicating with the treatment team, you can, I think probably the best thing they'll respond to is actually literature that's coming out of the academic community, of which there's a lot. It's just the diagnostic systems haven't quite caught up with where we are from a research perspective. Kristen, you might have a couple things to add, and I see we've got two people that may also jump in.
And as well, please look to the chat. There are so many great answers there as well, of prompts and things to talk through. And yeah, I don't want to make the folks with hands waiting. So Caitlin, why don't you go ahead, and then Marie, you can jump in.
You were talking about for people trying to find support. Melanie will know that I have been trying to get support for over several years, but because my BMI is too high, I can't get the support yet. I eat about twice a week, and it's kind of like very tiring to knock on mental health services when they just basically go on about, oh, your BMI is not low enough. There's no sign that you got an eating disorder because your bloods aren't low, and blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of like very, very difficult for people to actually access support, especially in England. I know plenty of people are from overseas and stuff. So I just want to chip that in.
Yeah, thank you, Caitlin. And you're definitely not alone there. I hear that from lots of folks. So I'm sorry you're dealing with that. Marie, why don't you go ahead and jump in?
I really hear what you're saying, Caitlin, because I live in the UK, and it's all about BMI, and it's made me very angry. And even when I've needed support, and even when I've known that I'm close to qualifying for that support, I've refused to engage in services that quantify recovery by weight, because I think that adds to the eating disorder, that only supports it. So I don't think that's a recovery model at all. I've got a mantra book which I've been working through with a private counsellor, and I do recommend things like the Maudsley method, having a look at some of the stuff, especially if it's like a family dynamics kind of situation where there's a family that could be the support. I also now help run a peer support group in my local area, so I'm kind of trying to get really involved with this sort of stuff, and we were, like, my friend who also helps me was on the radio this morning. So yeah, just really interested in listening to everyone, really. Yeah, hi from England.
Oh, thanks, Marie. I'm kind of listening, like, makes me angry to hear it, but also hopeful, and I guess there does seem to be a feeling of movement, and like change is, we're on the cusp of change. I will say, for those in England, and I know I sound American, but I'm based in the UK. I live in London, and I'm part of a group of researchers that have been applying for a very large grant from the UK government that's just passed to the next stage. It's all about weight stigma in diagnosis and treatment. So it is on, like, we're moving. It's, I promise, it's happening, behind closed doors. And I'm really kind of thrilled that it's gotten to a shortlisted stage. So it tells you that the reviewers have all recognized it as really important. So I think the hopeful aspect is that they're, the culture is responding, and it's aware of it. But it does impact. I'm curious, for, going back to your own experience. Gosh, I can imagine it's frustrating, and it's hard to be struggling with something and finally have that courageous moment when you're ready to ask for help, and then be told, oh yeah, actually you don't qualify, or actually, you recognizing that you're struggling with this, actually it's not real, or it's not bad enough. Like, God, oh my God.
I have to say, I took a somewhat joy in where I reached out for help, and they said that they'd refer me to the eating disorder team, and I actually said, no, I don't want you to. I wanted to tell them no, and not them tell me no. So that was like yeah, I don't know if that makes any sense to anyone, but the power dynamics for eating disorder care are just wrong.
Oh, it makes so much sense. Power dynamics for eating disorder care, but just healthcare generally. You know, it's eating disorders are one aspect of it, but this idea that there's a sort of filter around who gets care and who's deserving of care is a massive problem. Sorry, Kristen, go.
I had an experience similar to what you just mentioned, Chelsea. One of the first times I asked a doctor, like, hey, do you think something's maybe going on here? I was told no, I was fine because my BMI was too high. And as well, I just want to put it out there for anyone in the US right now. Like we're just subjected to the new pediatric guidelines that are really, really incredibly worrying. But again, I just want to point out that so many people are speaking out against them. And it's not just the people who were already in the eating disorder world. And that's giving me some hope, right? That it's not just the people who already know, it's the people who are kind of saying, hey, you know, this doesn't seem right. And that conversation is getting bigger. So even in the midst of these really, really upsetting recommendations, I'm looking to the people speaking out and being really encouraged by all of the corners where those voices are coming from. So yeah, I guess, you know, US and UK got some different places right now, but as well, I am still really hopeful that change is coming. Sorry, just checking out the chat right now as well. There's so many people sharing so many really incredible and powerful things here.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. Was on mute, but there's been some gems in the chat. One person who shared, my experience has less to do with the number of the BMI and more to do with the emotional distress, isolation, shame, and the emotional rage and powerless that shows up as part of this. Yeah, you are not alone in that. I know we're getting close to moving into some yoga practice, and man, for a conversation like this, yoga can be really beneficial. But I want to put out there one more time, like this bringing together of the personal and the collective. Of I think it's sometimes a nice entryway into the personal to go, what do I want to see change in the world, in my culture, in my society? So I wonder, what does it look like for you to embody that change? And that could be really practical. It could be really personal. But I wonder, are there thoughts on that? What is it like, these changes that we've been talking about that we want to see in the world, that we want to see in our culture, in the treatment systems? What would it and what does it look like on a day-to-day basis for you to embody that change and to be sort of a vessel for that change?
I think
it may not be like, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't know where the hand thingy is. I don't have my camera on, but for me, I think that change that embodiment comes from, I'm an artist, and I think it comes from putting my art in the world. And then, I had just an experience with this over the weekend, and it was very validating. I actually put like a little essay next to my work that described what the process was behind it. And that was so cool for me to see that people, they resonate with it and they see it. And it's also a point of vulnerability for me, that I'm willing now to be out there. And because the more I do it, the more I see it's a collective deep breath to those that can see it. There will be those that judge and put a label or whatever, but I find for the most part, people are just like, oh, someone's being real. And that just feels so good. So for me, that's embodiment of that.
Thank you so much. And I'm just going to share that for me, it's very much service. Being able to get out there and give to others and help others in whatever way I can. That's That's how I embody it. And then I see one more hand. So Chelsea, what if we let red go ahead and then we start to pivot into our practice?
Sure, that's great.
Thank you, ladies.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I want to make sure. So the question was how to be an example to our communities and our world. The thing that I've been finding to be really supportive to those that I coach is be visible, be vulnerable and courageous, and be willing to speak first. Those things have been allowing others the ability to their own humanity. And I noticed that when and actually, Kristen, you just said the word service. The more often than I'm in service, even when I'm going through my own struggles, which I go through waves of, one, being vocal about it reduces the amount of shame that I experience and feel. Just getting it through my voice so it's no longer a thing that's unsaid. But then what I've been finding is that as I'm sharing my story and the struggles, people who look up to me or people who are in my vicinity allow themselves more the ability to speak up themselves. And so it becomes something that is no longer in a space of isolation and a space of shame. It's almost like an exhale where you're not holding your breath any longer, and you get the opportunity to go, oh, thank God I'm not the only one. The other thing that I do regularly is I practice actually being able to express emotion. One of the practices that I've brought to my community is anger and sadness, like grief release, teaching people how to punch a pillow, take a tennis racket to a bed, draw, color, dance, move their bodies. We don't have a lot of permission in this world, or we haven't in the past to do that. So creating an opportunity for people to see me doing it gives them the permission to do that themselves. And some days I don't feel brave enough to do that. And those are the days that I'm, gentle and kind with myself. But I also do have a regular practice every week that I've made a promise to myself that no matter what, I'm going to do this because it's what has me feel better. And I invite others to participate. So those are some ways that, So another way, somebody just said throwing ball socks is so good. I also like living in, when I live in the country, I will soft boil like 3 dozen eggs and then take them out, and I will write on the eggs what is pissing me off or what I'm sad about. And then I will throw them at trees and scream at the same time. And that feels really good. And I get to feed the trees in the, throwing ice into a bathtub is awesome. It works really well. But those are ways that I have found that, and teaching people how to do that and giving people the permission gives me the permission to do that as well. So that's what I had to share there. Thank you.
I love that. Thank you. Being visible and letting people see it makes it possible in a way that isn't there before that. And as well, just your call out to community. I just want to say that that's one of the things I most love about Eat, Breathe, Thrive, and is very much in line with Ann's philosophy that being with people, being in community with people who understand is important and powerful.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think just even listening to you, Red, it's like, oh, this is really powerful. Just the gentle reminders as you're talking about your own experience. Like I wasn't even watching you, through exit trees, although that was a hilarious image to think about. Like, poor trees. I'm kidding. But even just listening, it's like, oh yeah, there's permission there to do that. Even just hearing you talk about it is permission. And I think it kind of harkens back to so much of what we've talked about this whole conversation around authenticity and permission, to go back to one person shared at the very beginning, permission to be as you are in the world is a huge part. Okay, well, let's get into some yoga while we have time. And I really do think, wow, this conversation is so ripe for the role I think yoga can play in recovery, which is allowing us to embody all of this that goes through our minds. One thing about people with eating disorders, it seems they've got really powerful minds. They've got a mind that can make them ill, but also a mind that can enact so much change and positivity in the world. And so kind of reformulating our relationship with our body so that it can be a vessel for these changes, I think is one of the, like, I know that kind of sounds hokey, but it's true. Like, this body is your vessel to be that change. And so coming into it, being in relationship, being in harmony with it is, I think, the way, is the path to healing, and the path to offering that up to others. I know I hear myself and I'm like, oh my God, you are a fruitcake. You've become a fruitcake, but it's true. I believe all of it. Not in a negative way. I say fruitcake lovingly. I mean, you know, a giant hippie. So anyhow, I will tell you what, I am sitting on a bench in my kitchen / living room, and I'm not going to move from the position I am in for this practice. So why I share that with you is you can be in whatever seat you would like to be for this practice. Fun fact about the word yoga and the word asana in particular. Asana, if you've ever heard of that, is our word for poses in yoga. It means seat. It's literally translated from Sanskrit to English as seat. So my invitation to you is to find your seat, a seat that you would like to be in for this practice. So that can be on a chair, a bench, on a floor, on a bed. Your seat doesn't have to be literally sitting down. It could be standing up. It could be laying down. So find a seat, a kind of metaphorical seat for your practice. And then I find it sometimes helpful in the beginning of the practice to close my eyes and to go inward. But for others, and for me sometimes actually, closing my eyes is like really discombobulating and disconnecting. So if you would like to, if it feels like it would help you to connect with your body and yourself right now, please feel free to close your eyes. And also feel free to keep your eyes open. So if that feels safer, if that feels like a better way to connect in this moment, you might just let your eyes rest on one point. It could be on a table or on a carpet. Wherever you are, eyes open or closed. Go ahead and just start to notice your breath. Find the act of just noticing changes my breath. You might notice that, like meta noticing, how noticing your breath shifts your breath. Notice how it shifts. And if it hasn't shifted, maybe I invite you to shift it a bit. So start breathing in a bit deeper. Longer breaths, fuller breaths, really taking the entire inhale to fill your lungs with oxygen. So you can get as much oxygen in as you can. And then when you exhale, just notice that quality of letting go of the oxygen, releasing it out into the atmosphere and out into the world. It's carbon dioxide when we let it go, and a little change and transformation. Again, like that, breathe in. And breathe out. It's kind of amazing how just the act of breathing creates a change in the world of oxygen to carbon dioxide. Just that very act, we're starting to enact change. If your eyes are closed, I invite you to open them now. And the temptation is probably going to be to immediately look at your laptop or your computer or your device. Okay, mine is too. But see if you can open your eyes and start to look around your space at everything that's not on your laptop or your computer or your phone. And just start to notice what's in your room, or your space. You might first notice the objects, plants, pieces of furniture, light fixtures, windows, the flooring, there's carpet, rugs. Might notice the colors, greens, white, grays. Got reds and purples. You might notice the quality of objects and of the room itself, the walls, pieces of furniture. And bringing your attention back from the outside and back internal to the space within yourself. Either close your eyes, leave them open, resting on one thing, and see if you can bring to mind, just personally, we've talked about a lot of changes, but for you, bring to mind one change that you would like to see in your life. And I find sometimes rather than thinking about a whole year or the whole world, I just think about what's a change I'd like to see in my life, in my relationships, in the way I'm being in the world, just in the next few days. And even just the next few minutes, the next few hours, but certainly just the next few days. Mine might float from idea to idea, but you can settle on one and start to wonder about and imagine, be curious about what it would look like. And then just for the next few moments of our yoga practice, my invitation to you, and this is something I'll also play with as we practice together, is what would it look like to embody that shift and embody that change? What would it look like in how you move and how you breathe? How you think and how you're being with yourself. What would that change look like? We'll see if we can bring it into our yoga practice. Sometimes there's something around authenticity or connectedness, presence. See if you can bring that into your yoga practice. Let's start with just a little bit of movement. And this isn't going to be too specific. First, I just want you to bring some kind of movement into your upper body. So for me, it's naturally kind of a twisting that's wanting to happen. Could be, Kristen's doing like a roll of the shoulders and a roll of the neck. Just see what kind of movement feels the most natural in your body. Just bring some type of movement. And bringing that change to mind, you might think about what would that quality of that look like in how you're moving, and the kinds of movement that you're drawn to. And especially for those of us who struggle with our relationship with our body, sometimes when we're asked to just do something, it can feel like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what to do right now. That's true. You can probably just take some ideas from what you're seeing around you. You might just start by moving one body part, noticing what feels good and what doesn't. So you've been sticking with one movement, you might try a different one now. Do twists. Do any type of kind of rhythm to the movement. There might be, I'm kind of feeling like quite a lot of movement right now, feeling a bit stuck, but it might be a long and slow movement. It might be a reach up, like you're first getting out of bed in the morning, especially if you're lying down. Getting as tall as you can, taking up space. Oh, and then as I do that, I'm wanting to kind of stretch side to side. You might just notice what parts of your body need some movement. Some side stretches might be really good. Then notice if your breath has gotten shallow as you've been moving, and see if you can bring in some intentional breaths with your movement. Sometimes that's linking the movement up with your breath, taking an inhale with each movement and exhale with each movement. Sometimes it's just noticing the breath. That's great. Okay. So for those of you who are sitting, you can choose to stay sitting. You can also choose to stand up. So if you'd like to stand up here, you're more than welcome to. I'm going to sit for my practice today, but I'll cue for those who are standing up, but it looks like Kristen might stand up. So you'll have a demo of someone standing up as well. So you can do this sitting or standing up. Great. Okay, so we'll start with hands at side, as Kristen has them, and my hands are just at my side on my seat. And then I want you to take a really long and deep breath in and raise both hands up toward the sky. And come at your sides or up in front of you. Okay, deep breath in. And then as you exhale, bring your right hand down to your side and reach your left hand over. Great. Just slightly over. Great. Stretching through side ribs. Good. Inhale, reach all the way up. Reach as tall as you can. Exhale, bend your elbows and open your heart and chest. Be mindful of your shoulders. Good. Inhale, reach back up. Oh, I got a nice crack there. Body waking up a little bit. Inhale, reach all the way up. Exhale to the other side now. Okay, so one hand comes down, the other hand reaches over. Good. Inhale, come all the way back up, both hands up, get as tall as you can. And then exhale, bring your hands to your heart. Great. Let's take one breath there with hands at heart. A deep breath in. And exhale. Okay, let's do that again. Inhale, reach up. Exhale, bring your right hand down, left hand over. Inhale, reach up. Exhale, bend your elbows, open your heart. Spread your fingers wide as you do this. Inhale, reach up. Exhale, left hand down, right hand over. Good. Inhale, reach back up. And exhale, bring your hands to your heart. Wonderful. Okay, go ahead and let your hands come to rest beside you. Okay, so we're going to do a warrior two pose. For those of you who have done yoga before, I'm going to do my warrior two seated today. You can do it standing up. You can also do it lying down. So Kristen's standing up, and I'll do Kristen first because it's the traditional one, and I'll talk you through what I'm going to do in my body and how you can do this lying down as well. So let's start with the right leg. So your right foot, if you're standing up, is going to come toward the top of your mat, if you have a mat, or it could just be this invisible mat or a towel on the floor, just the ground, because the ground is fine. I'm going to, because I'm sitting down, I know you can't see my legs, but I'm just going to take one leg out to the side. So I'm taking my right leg out to the side. Great. Wonderful. And then Kristen's stepped her left leg back, which is perfect, and bend her right knee. So for those of us who are sitting down, you can stretch your left leg out straight, and your right foot is going to be, so it's kind of like a warrior two pose. It's going to depend a little bit on what you have. And yeah, I can see one person is actually doing a Janu Sirsasana, so that's great if you're sitting down. If you're laying down, you just lie down on your back, and you can do the exact same pose that Kristen has in her legs on your back. Great. Wonderful. You know what, maybe I can actually show what I'm doing here. Okay, so if you were seated, I'm on a bench. You can see I've got my right foot stepped forward, and my left leg is back, and it's pressing into the ground. And I'm sitting down, so I've got a seat beneath me. Okay, great. No, it's not a weird camera angle at all. Oh, and Kristen's got on the ground as well. So she's lying down, heart is open and chest is open. Wonderful, great. So if we are, whether you're sitting or standing or lying down, find your way into this pose. You've clearly got lots of variations. If you'd like, you can take your arms out, right? So opening across the chest. And I love a warrior two pose for this practice of embodying change, because it's sort of open to interpretation. So think about that change that you brought to mind and what that is for you in your life. And I know I'll just share mine vulnerably. Mine is actually to be more vulnerable in the next few days, because I'm struggling with that a little bit right now. So what I'm going to do is see if I can embody vulnerability in my body. And I'm just thinking about what would that look like for me. And for me, that's an opening of the heart and a palms facing up. So I want you to think about what your change is. You don't have to look at me anymore. What your change is and what that would look like in your body, what that would feel like. So is it rooting your feet into the ground? Is it hands on heart? Is it eyes closed and coming into yourself? Is it arms around yourself? So what does that look like for you? What does it feel like to embody that change? And then when you find that pose for you, just take 3 deep breaths into it. Wonderful. You can bring your arms, your legs down. I'm going to kind of take a moment to transition. I'm going to bring my legs back together. And before we take that other side, I want you to take a moment and just think, what is the opposite of that change I want to see in the world? And what would that look like in my body right now? And see if you can embody that just for a second, just to feel the difference. And take 3 breaths in whatever that is for you. Okay, so taking yourself out of that whatever that was, maybe shaking it out and then go, because that's not really what we want. Sometimes it's good to notice, oh, that's not what I want to be embodying. And then let's take it on the other side. Okay. And now we're going to extend, we're going to take the left foot forward. And whether you're sitting, lying down, or standing up, left knee is going to be bent. And then right leg is going to extend. Great. And then coming back to that change you want to see in yourself, in your own life. What does that look like? What does that look like in your body? And it doesn't have to look the same on one side and the other. It could look different. It could be hands on heart. It could be arms reaching up. It could be arms reaching forward towards something. It could be palms gently turned up. It could be embracing yourself. It could be hands on belly. Find that pose in your body and take 3 deep breaths. Great, go ahead and release that. Okay, if you're lying down, you can bring your legs back together, sitting down, legs back together. If you're standing up, you could take a seat for a moment. We're going to end here in a moment. I just want to give you an opportunity to a last pose, a yogi's choice pose is what I always call this. So this could be a twist. This could be a stretch. It could be a shavasana. It could be knees into chest. For me, it's going to be a twist. So I'm just going to do a gentle twist in seat, taking my right hand to my left knee and taking a look behind me. Be knees into chest. Could be a forward fold. Could just also be a final resting pose. Great. Okay. And turning back toward your camera, toward community. God, it's too short. It's just too short, aren't they? Fortunately, Melanie from my team, our director of education, reminded me to leave a couple minutes at the end to not close. How was that for you, Kristen?
That was really nice and something I needed too. So you shared that you were working to embody vulnerability. For me, it's compassion. And it's something that I've been doing for years, both for myself and for the people around me. And it was interesting. You said, think about the different one. I found I couldn't breathe into that while I was thinking about, judgment and barriers. I was like, I don't know, I can't do that. So it was just a really nice, tangible change. And I was like, okay, for me, I'm gonna soften. I'm not gonna push myself to go hard. I'm just gonna do the gentle movements that feel good and be compassionate to myself and think about how to bring that to other people as well.
Oh, that's beautiful. I did not want to stay in my anti-vulnerability. It was very long.
It was uncomfortable.
But it's so important because I think I embody, like, the thing is about doing that is when I'm not being that in the world, when I'm not being vulnerable, I'm completely disconnected from my body, So it's actually like embodying it for a moment and kind of coming into like, oh, right, that's the thing that I'm doing, that's what it feels like. So for some reason, embodying it for a moment, I was like, oh no, that is not who I want to be and how I want to be in the world. And it allows me to kind of gives me a sense of, oh, right, that's what that feels like, that sort of quality that is manifesting in, of being, and it shows up in all sorts of ways. You know, maybe you're working with being assertive or being authentic, and that kind of opposite quality can be a fun thing to play with embodiment, because it's like, oh, right, when I embody that doesn't feel very good.
Yeah. And just practicing noticing it too, right? Like that's so that you can change it.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, this has been a great session. I'm so grateful to everyone who made time to be here with us live. And if you're watching the recording, hello from the past. I hope the future is wonderful. And thank you for joining us. Melanie has dropped some links into the chat. Thank you to all the EDAW facilitators that are here. I see you guys. Great to see you all, and I hope to see you soon.
And to the candid folks.
When's the next one?
It's quarterly.
It'll be in an email to you tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's on the event calendar now, Caitlin.
Yeah. So everyone that registered will have an email in their inbox with not only links for the how to sign up for the next one and the recording and all of that, but also other things you can get involved with at Eat, Breathe, Thrive and Anand, whether that's peer support groups or on our side, yoga courses and some of the virtual campfires, all of that good stuff. But thank you so much. That was great. It was a wonderful way to spend a Monday evening on my side.
Yeah, Chelsea, the Monday morning for me still. So this is just a beautiful way to start the week. So thank you so much.
Beautiful. Thanks, guys. Thanks,
everyone.
Have fun.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye, everyone.